Good afternoon, everyone. The town of Hinton respectfully acknowledges that it is located on the First Peoples traditional lands. We recognize this traditional territory to show respect and understanding to those who walk this land since time immemorial. Today, we uphold our ongoing responsibility to work together in the spirit of the intent of the treaties with all the First Peoples and nations that call this place home. The town expresses gratitude for the opportunity to build a better community on these sacred lands for generations to come. And with that, I'll call this meeting to order at 4:02. Council, any additions or deletions to today's agenda? Seeing none, I'll go to CAO Panasic.
Nothing from administration.
Thank you, CAO Panasic. With that, Council, I'll entertain a motion. Councillor Hawes.
I'd like to move that we adopt the regular council agenda for June 6, 2023.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Any debate? Seeing none, we will go to voting. And that is carried unanimously. And for those who are in attendance or online, Councillor Stashik should be joining us momentarily. That'll bring us to our council's minute for adoption. Council, any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Council. Councillor Hawes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that we adopt regular council May 16th, 2023 minutes and committee of the whole May 30th, 2023 minutes, please.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Again, Council, we have a motion on the floor. Any debate? Seeing none, we will commence voting. And that is also carried unanimously. That brings us to our citizens' minute with council. This is an opportunity to come forward, share your thoughts, concerns, and just please state your name. Seeing no one, that'll bring us to our action items for this afternoon. We have 5 of them. The first one is 6.1, Hinton Water Treatment Plant Condition Assessment and Contingency Readiness, CAO Panasic.
Thank you, Mayor. Through to council, I will turn this one over to our Director of Strategic Projects, Mr. Rousseau.
Good evening, council. It's this report was before you at Committee of the Whole last week, where we spoke to a large extent about the contingency plan as well as the readiness for us in the event that we should assume the existing infrastructure, both that belongs to the town of Hinton, as well as those that belong to West Fraser, that is on the West Fraser lands. And the reason we brought this forward is really twofold. One was to ensure that we could be ready should we have to assume this piece of infrastructure, realizing that the town owns infrastructure in that facility where we actually turn it into potable water once it comes as a raw state to us and partially treated. The other part of this is to ensure that we understand what the condition of the existing infrastructure, that being the town of Hinton, as well as West Fraser's infrastructure. This also emanated from a feasibility study that was done in 2018 on the entire water plant in terms of what our next step should be. Then in 2022, we undertook a workshop afresh when there was newer people at West Fraser. We then came together, we looked at where we left things off. And one of the things that came strongly out of this was that we need to understand the existing condition that we're dealing with, realizing that, the current plant has a different philosophy under which it operates. One, it's more under an industrial sort of operation that it runs right now, and we need to bring it and scale it down to a municipal side of things. So is it viable for us as the town to take that on? The other part of this is the condition study is that you'd be able to be more grant ready because you'd be able to demonstrate that you've looked at every option that is the best long-term approach by the town. And finally, I'll just leave it to this, that council, there is a strong possibility that should we go ahead with this, that we can actually fund the condition study as well as the contingency readiness, as well as if we take the full 200,000, would actually begin the feasibility of a preliminary design that is often a requirement when you have to go for granting for the full build that we will have to do in phase one, whatever that strategy will be at the time. So open for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Russo. Council, I have Councillor Taylor.
I don't mind. This, if I read correctly, is to do an assessment of the existing infrastructure. That's what we're going to spend the money on, and that's going to inform what we're going to do with other things. So I don't mind spending money on a good assessment of the existing water plant, especially if it helps us down the road make a $20 million decision. I think that's probably a good thing to do. I do have 3 questions to help inform my decision on that. If I can get through 1 or 2 now. One would be, is option 1 a realistic option that the board of director has accepted and will accept into the future? Because I don't want to spend what looks like $124,000 doing something, find out that the building's in great shape and we can keep it for another 20 years, to find out that the board of directors says we have to, get out of it tomorrow, because then we just wasted $124,000. I'm a bit concerned because over the decades, the West Fraser has sort of changed a little bit what they've said to us on the direction related to the water plant. First they want us out entirely. Now it looks like we got 4 options, of which being out entirely is not one of those options. So it seems to contradict what's happened in the past. Mm-hmm. So please tell me we're not going to spend $124,000 and then it's going to be wasted because we still have to get out of that building anyways.
So if I may answer the first question through the mayor to Councillor Taylor, as I said, we've had a bunch of new staff that is in place in West Fraser. Ourselves are brand new. The 2022 June the 9th and the 10th workshop we had was in fact to pick up all the pieces where it was left off. The options that you see in front of you was taken to West Fraser's C-suite, the executive team, and they actually endorsed that this is the pathway that we could take. One of the 4 could be an opportunity. So I am persuaded, and I'm almost convinced that I don't believe that we will be asked to vacate the area at minute's notice. I think we've given another opportunity to look at it one more time and make sure that the decision for the town is the right one for the short to the long term.
Councillor Taylor.
Going to move on to the next one. I don't know the expertise of the consultant that we're using. So that's kind of a question. That's question 4. But did we try to get a report from Aquaterra for some of this information that we're going to spend $124,000 from? Because I would think that the consultant we've hired for the last 3 or 4 years to run the building would have a good idea on the condition of the building and the condition of some of the pipes. Was there an opportunity to get some of that information without having to spend a ton of money?
The short through to the chair to Councillor Taylor. The short answer is that we did not get that information from Aquaterra to tell us what the condition is. That would be outside the scope of what they're currently operating. Right now, Aquaterra is helping, of course, West Fraser under their sort of contract. And then we have a separate agreement with Aquaterra for our component. In terms of the full review that is going to be done, because you're looking at 2 different operations being actually coming out as one operation, meaning water comes out that's treated, is that Aquaterra would be part of that assessment in order to inform certain, what is the capital expenditure potential, what are some of the day-to-day nuances that they're dealing with that could be fixed or that could be limped along. These are all things that will come out of that assessment.
Question 3.
Go ahead.
Thank you for your patience. I don't quite understand in this report. I get why we're spending the $124,000. I understand that. But there's a reference that if we follow administration's recommendation, we're actually approving up to $200,000. So we're approving an extra $76,000, which according to this report is for, I will read, feasibility preliminary design for the preferred long-term water plant solution. What I don't understand is why would we approve beyond the 124 and the extra $76,000 at this time? When we want to see what administration comes back to us with all four of the options and then make a decision on how to go forward, and then to approve money that we need to go forward with, or other than approving that right now, it seems to me we're jumping ahead an extra step that we shouldn't be jumping ahead on.
So through to the chair, to Councillor Taylor, the rationale from administration in order to request the 200,000, you'd know back when CEO Panasic and the finance brought forward the adjusted budget, that was 250,000. Then we scaled it back simply because we realized that if this is approved in June, we have less than 6 months left of the fiscal year to be able to spend 250,000. The 124,000, when we looked at the consultant scope, we also brought that down from what it was, which was much higher than 124. So the balance of 124 to 200,000 was really on the preface that we can have continuity when the grants are opening up here or closing in November, that we have sufficient funds to do preliminary options to the grantor in order for us to be considered. So that balance was really for us to get grant and shovel ready for options that may help us to get the grant in November when it closes on the 30th. And then, of course, the grant is allocated early in the next year if we are successful. So that was the thinking behind it, that the condition assessment is 124. The balance of that would be then harnessed for going forward preliminary work and consulting work that needs to happen.
Okay, that's fine. I just concerned that we're going ahead with that 76,000 before we come back with the council with what the preferred long-term solution is. This gives you carte blanche to go ahead with that long-term solution without coming back to council.
If I may, through the chair, that would not be the case, Councillor. What we'll do is that though we have access to spend $76,000, we would still come back and say, here's what the condition assessment said, very quickly turn that around, and here's where the preferred options. If you look back in some of the bullet points we've raised, is that the condition assessment will also give a professional recommendation by the consultant that which option they would recommend to the council. So that would give us license to then move ahead with any consulting fees to the design that will support the final product.
Just want to clarify what you said.
Yep.
So you said before you do much work on what the preferred option is and start spending the bulk of this $76,000, you're going to come back to us to have a discussion on all the options.
That is correct. That is correct. What is the best long-term option based on all of the research and studies that we've done?
Then why do you need the 76,000?
Well, we were just thinking about at the time when the budget came forward, we realized that if we want to get grant ready for any of the options that is listed, so we could in the grant say that the likelihood of option 1 and 2, I'm just using a scenario, could be the following. There's some engineering, design, feasibility drawings that needs to be prepared. So we just made allowance for that, but that expenditure would not occur before we come back to council. We just tried to get the budget cleaned up, and whatever's left at the year end would return to where the budget came from initially. That was the rationale, to have flexibility to be able to do some upfront work when it comes to design aspects.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to add, while I do have the floor, Councillor Taylor, you asked why this consultant. This consultant has been working since, I think, as early as 2018 on how that plant was put together and how it was kept going, and assisted West Praise as well as the town, and even the infrastructure we have in the existing plant has been designed by this consulting firm. So they have an intimate knowledge of what works and what could give and what the asset life is like and all those added benefits. So we are not, if we had to go out and maybe get a different consultant, we will have to provide all this empirical information, time, cost would then add up. So the value that the 124 is going to give us the mileage needed to get to this point of making a defined decision.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Laverge.
Thank you. You mentioned downsizing the commercial operation to a municipal operation. It was my understanding that the water plant would continue to produce water for West Fraser. Is that not the case? Like, what are we talking about with customizing to bring it down to municipal production? I mean, it's been operating like that for as long as I've been around.
Yeah. Yeah, so through to the chair to Councillor Labarge, the idea is not to eliminate West Fraser from not being a client of ours. So what will happen is they'll still be a client of ours like any domestic user or industrial user. The requirements of water intake is reducing, and this is a conversation we had. So when you look at the type of infrastructure that's in the plant right now, it behooves us to look at what is the capacity. We are 10,000 people and growing. And so normally when you do a water plant design, you look at what the percentage growth would be over a period of time. Is it 1.8% growth? Is it 2.1%? And these are the factors that we'd look at. And that will most likely cause us to downsize. Now, when I say downsize, it doesn't mean that we are going to reduce the capacity of somebody else getting water from us. We will still be able to meet and exceed that. The other part of this equation is that, as you remember from past conversations, that West Fraser owns the water license of which the town of Hinton is named on. And that is quite a handsome amount of water that we can extract from. And we want to ensure that we can harness that going forward in the future.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor LaBerge. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question about as we're assessing it, but there's also the conversation about grants. And I mean, depending or whether we go whichever option, potentially once we have that assessment, those grants are still going to be also needed no matter what those options are, right? So some of those dollars and some of that work behind the scenes is going to be also to get in for some of those grants and monopolize on those potentially, right? So that other $76,000 that may not be for the assessment, but could be for the grant writing and getting ready for, depending on whatever option comes forward. Is that also the case?
To the chair, to councillors, you're absolutely correct the way you summed it up. Just to add to that, even the 200,000 we're requesting you this evening, that is through a grant pursuit. And of course, we don't have a grant right now, but the likelihood of obtaining that grant is very, very strong. And the reason we use 200,000 as well, I should have shared this, is that for feasibility studies and the grant that's opening in August, that we are pursuing this, and you can retro all your costs up till April the 30th of this year. So if we spend any dime today, the grant is awarded to us, say September of later this year, you can retro that cost before March of 31st, 2024. So it's a very strong possibility of obtaining a grant or funding source that will fund this 200,000 if that's the amount council agrees to.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Council, I have no one else in queue. Any further questions, directions? Councillor LaBerge.
Thank you. I guess I'm a little confused then. What's more efficient of spending the 124,000, getting the assessment, then we're going to have the conversation, then we're going to decide what we're going to do. Like, why is it more efficient to sort of have 200,000 to spend as opposed to the assessment, which is what we're doing right now?
From Abel through to chair to Councillor LaBarge, the rationale behind the difference between 124 and 200 was to have the ability to have consulting fees should the grant require us to have preliminary drawings or preliminary technical information that is up to date. And sometimes the grants would say, okay, this is a long-term solution the town is looking for. Have you looked at all the options? And then we would have, through this condition assessment, plus other work that's been done in former years to inform that application that would be very strong, realizing that as a municipality like the town of Hinton, we have a strong case because we don't own our own water plant, but you also have many other municipalities that are contending for the same pool of funds. So if we have a very strong case technically supported, we should be in a very good shape to obtain granting for our go forward plan, and realizing that this is a go forward plan, that is a short term, this is the long term that we want to supply Hinton with water without interruptions.
Well, I guess I hate planning in case we get a grant, but if any of that work was done, that was something we would be able to use regardless go forward. Yes,
that's correct, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor LaBerge. Councillor Taylor.
I want to understand what you just said. So you said the extra 76,000 is in case we need to do a little extra work while we're doing option one and assessing option one. like a diagram needs to be upgraded for a possible upcoming grant. So then we can get that done while we're already doing work on option one. So the likelihood of spending very much as the 76,000 is not that great,
That'd be a fair comment, Councillor, that you've just made.
because it's only going to be if we need to do the work coincidental to doing work on option one. So you're not really doing very much towards the preferred option because you can't.
Just through the chair to Councillor Taylor, we have done work in the past on option one, but because West Fraser C-Suite has said we have not turned every stone. And so in order to compare what is the best approach going forward, now that they've also made certain sort of recommendations to their team, like we are making recommendations to council, it would behoove us to be able to look at, do you want to take it over? What is the implications for you to take it over? One of the things we talked about the table in early January with West Fraser when this was all discussed was one, capital outlay for a new plant would be right today. Capital outlay to take over the existing plant potentially would be staggered and staged, and that may be more appetizing and palatable based on our debt loads and all the expenditures we may have going forward on other matters in the town. So that made it even more attractive for us, in line with the four options, that this is one of the preferred answers that we need to get and technically supported as well.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With all that, I'd like to move that council direct administration to proceed with the water treatment plant condition assessment and contingency readiness report and funding request as presented. And if I could speak to it. This is a major project. We haven't talked a lot about this, and this I see as the major step forward in assessing what we already have, and then investing in future planning, even though we know still it'll be coming back to council once we have that assessment. But I want to set up, administration and to get a successful assessment and possibilities moving forward so that we have all the information when it comes down time to make those decisions on which option. So I'm comfortable with the budget the way it is, knowing too that administration obviously will be mindful of that as well. So that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Council, we have a motion on the floor, and I have Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I support it too, because I think that us sorting this out is probably the most important thing this council can do. Like if we can get an option that's cost effective, that will provide safe drinking water and a long-term security for the town of Hinton, it respects the fact that we're in this town paying, half the price of surrounding towns for water and sewer, and keep that up into the future, that would be an extremely good thing for this council to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council, any further debate or questions? Seeing none, we will commence voting. And that is passed unanimously. Council, anything further for 6.1? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Russo. That'll bring us to 6.2 additional budget, Valley Tri-Sport Court Project, CO Panasic.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. I will turn this one over to Ms. Juke.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. And with the chair's permission, I'll pass this on to Manager Way of Recreation, Parks and Culture.
Thank you both. Good afternoon, Council. Through the 2023 budget deliberation process, Council approved adequate funding to complete resurfacing and redesign of the Valley tennis courts to include tennis, pickleball, and basketball. Through the RFP was issued, though warranty concerns were raised by proponents regarding the condition of the asphalt subsurface. In order to prolong the life cycle and ensure adequate warranty for the resurfaced lines and redesign, administration is requesting an additional $50,000 to fund a complete asphalt overlay prior to the installation of the new surface with the lines and the referred to equipment. The original project scope, as well as the additional $50,000 for the asphalt overlay, will be funded using available MSI dollars. I can take any questions at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Way. Council, any questions, directions? What would we like to do with 6.2? Councillor Haas.
Quick question, first of all, thank you. So this was the company that assessed it, that determined that I made the recommendation if we were to go forward without doing this, then the work they would done wouldn't be guaranteed. Is that correct?
Thank you, Councillor Haas, through the remainder of council. Actually, it's both. So yes, it was one of the proponents who bid on the project, suggesting that the warranty would not be honored if we didn't complete the overlay using that asphalt. But we also had two separate contractors come in who typically do that type of work to take a look and also let us know that, yes, absolutely, it should be resurfaced at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Councillor Taylor or Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. I'd like to move the council approves an additional $50,000 to the Valley Tri-Sport Court Capital Project budget, with funds coming from the Municipal Sustainability Initiative to provide for an asphalt overlay of the base prior to commencing the resurfacing project. I'd speak to it quickly if I could. Although this is a $50,000 that we weren't intending to spend on this project, I think this $50,000 is well worth it, though. The fact that it's being funded through MSI means it's not impacting taxpayers directly through taxation, and it's going to give us a facility that is pretty much equivalent to what a brand new purpose-built facility would be, with long life to look forward to and usage of the facility. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. Council, we now have a motion on the floor. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be in support of this. I mean, going into this project, I think we all knew that area was run down, not knowing what we would get into until we did this. I've had the opportunity to share with many community members that this project, and they were very excited to see the Tri-Valley Sport Court, the opportunities that were going to be available down there. So I'm in full support of this. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Council, any further debate or questions? Seeing none, we will commence voting. And that is carried unanimously. Council, anything further for 6.2? Seeing no one, thank you, Ms. Way. That'll bring us to our third action item for this afternoon, whistleblower policy AD 1203, CO Panasic.
Thank you, Mayor. I will turn this one over to Ms. Hope.
You, Mayor, or Chair, through to council. Sorry. So we have before you the whistleblower policy amended as requested, and the directive, which gives a little more detail on the process. And I can answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Council, any questions, directions? I have Councillor Haas in queue.
Thank you. First off, thank you for all the detail. I think that it answers for me a lot of questions of the process. I do have one or a couple of questions. 6.3, it refers to that allegations must be made within 6 months of the date of the wrongdoing, or within 6 months of the date on which the whistleblower learned the facts. Is that a standard amount of time, is 6 months? Because in my, I guess, opinion, 6 months seems to be a long time, and memories change and things like that. So is that a regular standard amount of time?
Thank you for the question. That is I wouldn't say it's standard. It's like the longest we could give it and still have some due process.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Council, any further questions? Councillor Haas.
Okay. I do have another one. When it mentions all investigations in 7.1 will be conducted within a reasonable amount of time, it doesn't really specify what a reasonable amount of time is. So I'm just curious, does it need to be specified so that if we've got 6 months and somebody comes forward within that 6 months, at 5 months and 30 days or whatever, and then what is a reasonable amount of time? Is that supposed to be specified?
Thank you. Another good question. We were worried about specifying it because sometimes the availability of an external investigator that has the qualifications that you require for some of these could put you outside of a 7-day or 14-day. So we put reasonable so that you would do it as soon as practicable, given the availability of the resources.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Councillor LaBerge.
Thank you. In the lead into the document, there's a discussion of using Work Hub as a means of anonymously collecting the information. Would it necessarily involve an outside investigator? Like, would that be part of the process every time?
Thank you for the question. It would not be part of the process every time. We would look at the information that we had and the resources that we had available. And then the directive administrator gets to make that call on whether it will be investigated at all. And if it is going to be investigated, whether it will be done externally or internally.
I like that answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor LaBerge. Councillor Hawes.
Yeah, not really a question, just a comment. I just want to comment on 15 annual reports. I really appreciate that this would be part of it, so that we at least are hearing from administration, not on the incidents themselves, but at least how many are happening, and then, maybe build a conversation off that. So I appreciate that's been added into the policy, because I think it's important that we do hear those, being it's how it's a policy of council. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Council, I have no one else in queue. What would we like to do with 6.3? Councillor Hawes. Apologies.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that council direct administration, I believe it's option 1, right? To approve the attached whistleblower policy as presented. If I could quickly speak to it. I appreciate the conversation we had again during the committee of the whole, and thank administration for bringing back more detail. I know that was one of the questions, just trying to understand, once, how does it play out? How does it roll out? What are some of the accountabilities and things like that? So I appreciate the detail that was put into this. And I think it's just a good practice of an organization our size to have this policy in place, to monitor any situations and deal with them. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Council, we have a motion on the floor, and just to clarify, it's the recommended action, but not option 1, just
Yes.
in the event you thought otherwise.
Thank you.
Don't want to. Council, the motion is on the floor, and I have Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to say I'm in support of the proposed motion. I think this whistleblower policy is an important piece of legislation for the town. I foresee that this is going to be utilized very, very rarely, and that most concerns that are brought through regular channels can be dealt with appropriately through those regular channels. But I also do think it's important that there is an avenue available for, if an individual isn't getting the satisfaction that they require going through those conventional channels, they do have this as an alternative to ensure that their concerns will be dealt with, and they will be dealt with fairly, and there will be no repercussions to that individual. So I fully support this motion and bringing this policy forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. Council, any further debate, questions? Seeing none, we will commence voting. And for myself, it's not coming up because I had to exit because it came up during the debate prior to commencing voting. So I don't know if it can come back to my screen, if possible. Thank you. If we can vote again, please. Oh.
Always.
And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Council, anything else for 6.3? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Hope. And that brings us to our fourth action item for this afternoon, request to rescind policy number Corp 008 CO Panasic.
Thank you, CEO Panasic. Good evening, Council. We're before you today with a recommended action on this policy that it be rescinded. We've done a pretty thorough analysis of the risk and the benefits of the program in place. Back in 1993, it was fairly commonplace for corporations to have a policy like this in effect so that it would encourage employees to purchase computers, and usage at home would help with their training and development and I've lost my word, bringing the computers more commonplace into the workplace and advancing skills. The program as written through this policy has been fairly undersubscribed to in the last number of years that we had historical data for. Discussions with the senior leadership team, there was some concern that essentially loaning money for computer purchase when we're not able to really defend the benefit, the training that it's giving us, is possibly not a good use of public funds. Therefore, we're before you today looking for this policy to be rescinded. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Borbeau. I have Councillor LaBerge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, a lot of things have changed since 93. I had hair back then, for God's sakes. So I would like to move that council rescind policy number Corp 008 computer purchase policy.
Thank you, Councillor LaBerge. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Any debate? Seeing none, we will commence voting. Oh, I have Councillor Stashik. Apologies.
That's not the motion that was made.
Oh. Okay, thank you, Councillor Stashik, for pointing that. Took that for granted. If we could retract that and no, and now the proper motion that council rescind policy Corp 008 computer purchase policy. Voting has commenced. And that is carried unanimously. Council, anything further for 6.4? Seeing none, thank you, administration, Ms. Borbeau. That'll bring us to our final action item, third annual Wicked Woods Disc Golf Tournament, Hinton, CO Panasic.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll turn this one over to Ms. Juke as well.
Thank you, CAO Panasic, and through the chair to the rest of council. This report is before council for consideration of a one-off financial request for sponsorship of a sports tournament. The Wicked Woods Disc Golf Tournament is planned for July 21st to 23rd at the Hinton Disc Golf Course, which will attract 70 or more disc golfers and their families from Thursday evening, likely through Sunday afternoon. This is a growing event in a popular trending sport and the third year that it's taken place in Hinton. The tournament organizers are requesting a small amount of in-kind support under $750 in value, which is the threshold at which the CAO is authorized to approve in the policy. Originally, the request was for waiver of event tent rental fees, but the organizers have had a late donation of another tent, and so they may request instead a couple of porta potties to be placed at the disc golf club lands for the weekend, which is a value that's actually smaller. It's about $250 in kind value. The group has also secured use of the Mary Reimer Park for camping. This is basically an outdoor event. However, they are requesting sponsorship at the major sponsorship level. It's priced at $300, and in all, the cash and in-kind donation contribution would amount to approximately 3.75% of the original council contingency fund budget. The current balance of the fund is $10,278, and administration is recommending approval of this sponsorship.
Thank you, Ms. Juke. Council, I have Councillor Taylor.
So we got an agreement with these folks already, and we give them so much money in the agreement. And then in addition to that, we're going to give them some stuff like porta potties. And in addition to that, they want a $300 cash donation from us. Is that correct?
Through the chair to council. No, not quite. This tournament is hosted by the Hinton Disc Golf Association, but it is not actually the Disc Golf Association that's hosting or that's staging the event. The Wicked Woods Disc Golf Tournament is an annual tournament, and it's hosted, as I said, but it's not synonymous with the association group that the town supports.
But the last two things are true, that we're gonna give them some sort of in-kind thing like porta potties, and they want $300 cash.
Yes, thank you. That is correct. So the total amount of the contribution will be something in the range of $550, $600.
Okay, I'm prepared to make a motion if I could, please. I'd like to go with option 3. That council accepts this report for sponsorship of the 3rd annual Wicked Woods Disc Golf Tournament in Hinton in July 2023 as information. And you know, in essence, it almost seems to me that with this one-off funding request process, we've set up another way to give out grants. So we have the grant process, we have the one-off funding process. It seems like we're getting multiple ways to give out grants, which I think is becoming could become quite onerous for the taxpayer. I mean, one way to give out grants would be appropriate, but to have these two ways, and then also to be working on a DMO and DMF process where we spend tens of thousands of dollars, that's going to support these kind of projects on the long term. You know, perhaps if this process was truly emergent and couldn't have been predicted, or perhaps if this process was for citizens that truly were in need in this town, this is not an emergent process. This is an annual type of event that conceivably could have been run by the community grant process, which is the grant process that we have. I don't think it was ever the intent of council, and I'm not disc golf people, they do wonderful work, they got a wonderful facility, but I don't think it was ever the intent of the one-off grant process to set up yet again another type of grant process for this town. And that just seems to be what we're doing. So that's why I put the motion forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Councillor Stashik.
Mr. Mayor, just before I speak, could I hear what the motion is again, please? If that's okay.
I believe, Councillor Taylor, correct me if I'm wrong, that council accept this report on sponsorships of the 3rd annual Wicked Woods Disc Golf Tournament in Hinton in July 2023 as information. Is that correct, Councillor Taylor?
Okay, thank you. If I could speak to it. I'm in support of the proposed motion. I have nothing against this event at all. I think it's a wonderful event and it will attract people to the community. And it's great to see any type of event that is put on here that brings people and competitive atmosphere and helps to put Hinton on the map. My concern is that this type of an event, though, is typically the type of event that's supported by corporate sponsorship. Businesses donate to help support these types of businesses. Individuals donate to help support these types of events. My concern is if we start heading off down a path where we're providing municipal sponsorship to events like this, I could potentially see the floodgates opening and pretty much every type of event that comes to Hinton could feasibly come to the municipality and request sponsorship for it. This is something that I would rather see sponsored and brought forward by our local business community and individuals in our community. Again, I appreciate that they're putting this on. I welcome it coming to the community. I just don't think it's particularly appropriate that municipal tax dollars would go towards sponsoring it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. Councillor LaBerge.
Thanks. I guess I'll ask a question then as it relates. We're going to receive this as information as per the motion, but CAO does have the opportunity to provide in kind up to $750. Would they get their porta potty?
Through the mayor to members of council. So we don't have any requests for the porta potties yet. I think this was chatter because originally there was a request for event tents. I don't believe that that's a requirement of this event anymore. I guess my answer won't be very satisfactory, but it probably depends if we have them available and it's convenient for us as a municipality. If we're going to be incurring any cost, I think my decision would be a little bit different. But if they're available and we can provide them as a gesture of good faith, then I think my answer would be yes.
I like that answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor LaBerge. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I made this motion under the thought that we're just talking about council's discretion here. We're not talking about the town manager's discretion. And that if we have equipment or something that we can loan a group to help them out with an event, of course we would. That's what I think, within your discretion. That's the way the thought I made when I made the motion. That if you could give a porta potty, if you could give whatever it is to help them out, that'd be great.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Haas.
Just to clarify though, that those in-kind costs still come from our contingency fund, correct?
Through the mayor, that's correct.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. For myself, seeing that this policy is fairly new, if the $300 is below that threshold, this is just not eligible for you administration to approve it in kind under the threshold. I just want to clarify that.
Through the mayor, any cash requests is council's. The discretion of the CAO is specific to in-kind donations up to a certain value.
Okay. I'll speak against this. If this is the format for sponsorships, I kind of weigh this equally to the other process where we're offering in kind, which, you know, uses the funds within our contingency. Cash is separate. And since we have nothing else confirmed of not contributing, and we actually get promotional, visuals there for a tournament that brings in people throughout Western Canada here, I'm kind of fine with that. So I'm trying to weigh it on the merits. I also would not love to see 100 of them come, but this is the process that we've created, that it doesn't go through the other process and it has to come to us. So since nothing else is confirmed, I'm kind of okay with using 3% approximately of our contingency fund to support that. Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. I think one of the sticking points for me is the cash request. I think if it was a request to utilize some town-owned tents that aren't available through other avenues, to my knowledge, there isn't a party supply place in Hinton that does small tent rentals. I could be wrong, but so something like that, or something that's not available through, something that's not easily available through conventional means. If the town has it and it's at the town's, availability, that I would probably think of that slightly differently. But the cash request is the sticking point on this one for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. Council, any further debate or questions? Seeing none, we will commence voting. And that is carried 3-2 with myself and Councillor Hawes against. Council, anything else for 6.5? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Juke. And that will end our action items for this evening and bring us to our correspondence. Council information for June 6, 2023. Council, Councillor Taylor, thank you for that physical notice.
Well, I did it twice. I pressed the button like I should have. And I know because you weren't paying attention. Sorry about that.
Delayed. The floor is yours.
Just a thought for us all to think about for when the next one of these comes by, which I think will be next week or 2 weeks from now. But anyways, when these things come to us, if this is something that people could have reasonably predicted to go through the community grant process, then I think that's still our primary grant process, and they should have gone through the community grant process. I don't know if we made that a formal requirement, but or if you went through the community grant process and you were told no, to then come back through the back door through the one-off process. Those got to be things that we think about. Like, how many of these grant giveaway things do we want? Anyways, just my thought. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council, again, anything further for 6.5? Seeing no one in queue, that'll bring us to correspondence. Council information for June 6, 2023. Council, any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Councillor Haas.
I'd like to move that we accept council information package for June 6, 2023, please.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Council, we have a motion to accept the correspondence for information. Any debate? Seeing none, we will commence voting. Unfortunately, it is not capturing Councillor Astashik's or Hawes's administration. I don't know if there's an issue.
I just show them as not logged on.
Should be more.
I'll give it another quick moment. Otherwise, I'll ask for traditional voting and to be recorded by Miss Davy Campbell, which she's saying, Councillor Astashik and Hawes, all those in favor? Oh, is it up? Are you voting in favor, Councillor Astashik? Okay, so that will be a unanimous, and Miss Davy Campbell will capture that. That's our correspondence. That'll bring us to our notices of motion for this afternoon. Are there any? Seeing none, that'll bring us to our reporting for today, and I will start with my left with Councillor Astashik.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. I have nothing to report.
Thank you, Councillor Astashik. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to thank the chamber for putting on the beer and blue jeans event over at Ricky's. Attended that and yeah, got to meet a few new prospective business owners in our community as well. I just want to make a couple of announcements. Tomorrow evening, the Youth Art Night is happening. It will be we're working on, it'll be at the rec center and at the youth center there. And we're going to be painting murals for the train car at the museum. So any youth out there between ages 13 and 18 that want to come out and spend from 4 to 7 contributing to that. It's paint by numbers, so it's already been sketched out. We just have to paint it up. So FCSS also has an open house tomorrow night from 5 to 7 as well. That'll be at the center in the park next door. And then there's also the Hinton Valley Fun Day, Saturday, June 10th, 11 to 4 in the Hinton Valley Shopping District, with lots of events happening on there, barbecues and fundraisers and other things as well. So just wanted to mention those things coming up this week. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. I have Councillor Taylor.
Oh, I attended the Seniors Award lunch the other day, and it was well attended. It was well organized, and it was good to see the children out helping out. And no, it was a nice event. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor LaBerge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nothing to report.
Thank you, Councillor LaBerge. For myself, I had the a privilege to attend Alberta Adventures, which I highly recommend to all councillors to consider in the future. Out of all the conferences I've been to in my 10 years, this was I feel the most impactful, most variety, 150 different sessions. So you had choices of 7 or 8 sessions every hour. This was venture capitalists from all across North America and other parts of the world. If you're not familiar, a few years ago, Richard Branson attended. I'm surprised that the magnitude of this event is even in Alberta, and it's only year 5. So Indigenous investment, energy, there was a geothermal session. These are developers who are trying to get $1 million support throughout these venture capitalists. Alberta Innovates had, I think, about 15 of their staff there, which is a big contributor to investments in Alberta. And I was surprised Mayor Sohi from Edmonton was there, but there was not a lot of representation from municipalities, which I believe is an advantage for our community to make those connections for future investments, to know that Hinton in our area is open. So I suspect that will change in the future. But again, I'll forward if I haven't already, the information that was provided there. Have a look and consider it in the end of May of 2024, as those relationships, even if 50 fail, if one investment comes to our community, I feel it's worthwhile. And relative to other conferences, I believe was way better, without trying to say that other conferences aren't great. And that's all for myself. CEO Panasic.
Thank you, Mayor. I have nothing to report at this time.
Thank you, CEO Panasic. And that'll bring us to no closed session items. So motion to adjourn. Councillor LaBerge.
Quick on that one. I move we adjourn.
Councillor LaBerge, motion to adjourn. Any debate? Seeing none, we will commence voting. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much, everyone.